They thought they were home alone, doors locked, lights off, and nothing to fear. But something else was there too. These are 3 terrifying true stories of people who weren't as alone as they thought. And by the time they realized it, it was already too late. I had just moved into my first house. Nothing crazy, just a small 2-bedroom starter home about 30 minutes outside of town. The neighborhood was quiet, the kind of place where people wave at each other without actually knowing names. I liked that. I wanted to be left alone. The house was older, built sometime in the 70s with a creaky wooden frame and these weird little drafty spots by every window. But I liked it. I told myself the creaks and groans were just part of the charm. The first few nights were uneventful. I'd unpack a few boxes, make some cheap dinner, scroll TikTok until I passed out. Normal stuff, but then came Friday. It started the same as always. I got home around 6, microwaved some leftover pasta, and settled in to binge a couple episodes of some show I was only half invested in. Around 10 p.m., I decided to call it. I turned off the lights, locked the doors, front and back, double-checked the windows like always, and crawled into bed. That night, I couldn't sleep. It wasn't like I was anxious or anything. I just couldn't relax. I tossed, turned, fluffed my pillow, even got back up to drink some water. That's when I noticed it. My back door was unlocked. Now look, I know I locked it. I do it every night. I even did my usual routine, pulling on the handle twice to make sure it was shut tight. But when I walked into the kitchen, the door was slightly open. Not a lot, just a crack, like someone had opened it and didn't close it all the way. I just stood there. My heart started thumping loud in my chest. I slowly reached out and closed it, then locked it. Again. This time I yanked on the handle hard, even though I knew no one was outside. That's what I told myself anyway. The next morning I chalked it up to memory. Maybe I just thought I locked it. I was tired, distracted, whatever, but that night something else happened. It was around 2:45 a.m. I woke up to this faint, rhythmic sound, a dull thud-thud from somewhere inside the house. Not loud, but steady. I sat up in bed, heart already racing. I listened for a minute, then climbed out of bed. The hallway was dark. I didn't turn on any lights. I didn't want to make it obvious that I was moving around. The sound was coming from the living room, that much I could tell. Thud, thud, like something was bumping against the floor. I crept down the hallway, and as I got closer, I realized it was coming from the front door, like someone was pressing their palm against it over and over. I stopped at the corner of the hallway, hidden by the wall. I couldn't see the door, but I could feel it. Someone was on the other side. Then, silence. No more bumping, just a long, heavy stillness. Then came the whisper, just outside the door. "I see you." I swear to God, I stopped breathing. I backed away, slow and silent, then ran back to my room and locked the door. I sat in the corner, gripping my phone, debating whether to call the police. But what would I say? That someone whispered outside my door? Eventually, I must have dozed off in the corner. When I woke up, it was daylight. I checked the front porch. No one, no footprints, no signs of anyone even being there. Maybe I dreamed it. Or maybe I wanted to believe I did. I spent the rest of the weekend paranoid. I installed a cheap security cam above my front door, downloaded the app, set up alerts. That following Tuesday, something new happened. I got home from work, tossed my bag on the couch, and was about to start making dinner when I noticed something was off. I couldn't place it at first, but something just didn't feel right. That's when I looked at the hallway. The attic door was cracked open. Now this made no sense. The attic door is one of those old-school square panels that you pull down with a string, and I hadn't touched it since moving in. But the string was dangling now, and the panel was lowered halfway, like someone had opened it from the inside. I stared at it for a solid minute. Didn't move, didn't blink. Then I grabbed a broom and slowly pushed the panel back up until it clicked shut. I didn't dare pull it all the way down. That night, I didn't sleep at all. I kept the lights on in my bedroom, slept with a kitchen knife beside me. Every sound the house made had me on edge. Around 3:30 a.m., my phone buzzed. Motion detected, front door camera. I sat straight up and opened the app. There was someone standing at my door. They weren't knocking. They weren't ringing the bell. Just standing there, head tilted to the side, staring directly at the camera. No mask. Just a man, mid-40s maybe, scruffy beard, hoodie pulled up. The image was grainy, but his eyes were unmistakable. He was smiling. Then he stepped out of view. I waited. 10 seconds. 20. Nothing. I watched the app until the sun came up. Next day I went to the police. They sent someone out to look around, took my statement, asked if anything had been stolen. No, I said, just weird things. They didn't seem concerned. That night I had a friend stay over. Josh, an old coworker. I didn't want to be alone. We drank, played video games, tried to shake the weirdness. It worked, for a while. Then, around midnight, the power went out. No storm, no wind, just click, everything went black. Josh and I looked at each other. Then, in the silence, we heard something above us, in the attic. A dragging sound, like something or someone was crawling. We stared at the ceiling, too afraid to move. Then, a thump, directly above us. Josh whispered, "Did you hear that?" I nodded. Another thump, closer to the attic stairs. We both ran out of the house. Josh called the cops. They showed up maybe 15 minutes later. 2 squad cars. They went inside, checked the attic. It was empty. No signs of forced entry. Nothing missing, nothing broken. They told me it was probably an animal, maybe a raccoon, but I know what I heard. That wasn't a raccoon. Josh never came back after that night. I started sleeping with the lights on again, knife under the pillow. I even moved a chair in front of my bedroom door. A few nights later, I got another motion alert, front door camera. I opened the app. There was no one there. But the door was open. I know I locked it. I grabbed the knife, crept out of the bedroom, and made my way to the front of the house. My hands were shaking. The air felt wrong, heavy, like something was in the house already. I checked the door. It was wide open. Nothing outside, no one on the street. But when I turned around to go back inside, I noticed it. Footprints, muddy prints on the wood floor, leading from the front door into the hallway and toward the attic stairs. They stopped right beneath the attic door. That's when I knew I wasn't living alone. There had been someone in my house. Maybe there still was. I moved out that weekend, packed everything I could fit into my car, and crashed on a friend's couch. I didn't even go back for the rest. 2 weeks later, I checked the security cam one last time. There was a single clip from the night I left, a man walking down the hallway, from the attic, straight into the kitchen. He turned, looked directly at the camera, and smiled, like he knew I was watching. The house is still listed. No one's bought it, and the last few reviews on the listing all say the same thing. Great neighborhood, but we kept hearing footsteps in the attic. Some intruders come and go, others never left in the first place. But sometimes it's not your home they're in. It's someone else's. And you just happen to be the one house sitting. This next story will change how you feel about sleeping in someone else's home. This happened to me back in 2017, and even now, I can't walk through my own house at night without checking every corner. It was the first time I'd ever lived alone. I'd just turned 25, landed a decent job doing IT for a logistics company, and finally moved out of my parents' place. My apartment wasn't fancy. It was a bottom-floor unit in a fourplex just outside the city, but it was mine. My own little quiet space. And for the first few months, it was great.
I loved the freedom. No roommates, no noise, just me and whatever I wanted to do. But that silence, it eventually started feeling different. It started on a Thursday night. I remember because I was working late, had my laptop set up on the kitchen counter, trying to catch up on a server ticket backlog. It was probably around 11 p.m. when I heard the first sound. It came from the laundry closet. A soft click, like something settling behind the door. It wasn't loud, not even strange, really. These apartments were older, and the water heater was tucked into the same closet. But then it happened again. Click, and this time it was followed by a soft, low scratch, like a fingertip dragging against the inside of the door. I froze. The scratching stopped almost instantly. I waited. Nothing. I walked over, slowly, pulled the door open. Empty. Washer, dryer, a few hanging jackets. No one there. I told myself it was just the water heater shifting. Maybe the pipes expanding or something. Still, I left the door open after that. The next night was quiet. Nothing out of the ordinary. But Saturday is when everything shifted. I'd gone out to grab groceries. Nothing unusual, just a quick run to stock up for the week. I was gone maybe 40 minutes. When I got home, I opened the door and immediately felt it. The air inside my apartment was colder than outside. Not just chilly, unnaturally cold, like a fridge had been left open. I figured maybe I'd left the AC running, but the unit was off. Still, I brushed it off. Maybe some kind of airflow from the vent system. I unloaded the groceries, put everything away, and didn't think much of it until I went to grab a fork from the drawer. The silverware drawer was already open, and the weirdest part? The knife I usually kept at the back of the tray, the one I used the least, was gone. I stood there staring for way too long, trying to remember if I'd used it. But I hadn't even cooked anything that day. It was just missing. That night, I locked every window, double-checked every door. I even put a chair under the handle of the sliding glass door, just in case. Still, I barely slept. I kept thinking about that drawer, that one knife. Maybe I was just being paranoid. Sunday morning, I woke up early, made coffee, sat down to scroll through my phone like I always do, and then I saw it. My bedroom door was closed. I never shut it. Not unless I'm changing, but now it was shut, and I'd slept with it open. I stood there for a long time just staring at it, then slowly reached for the handle and pushed it open. Empty, no one inside. But the air, it had that same coldness, like something had just been there. I called maintenance, asked if anyone had entered my apartment. They said no. I asked if anyone had a key or was doing inspections. Again, no. That night, I left the hallway light on. And that was the night I saw it. It was sometime past 2 a.m. I was lying in bed, trying to ignore the fact that I felt like I was being watched. The hallway light filtered softly through the crack in my door. Then, creak, a single floorboard, from the kitchen. I sat up, didn't move, just listened. Then again, creak, closer this time, just outside my bedroom door. I reached down, grabbed the aluminum flashlight I kept beside my bed. It was heavy, like a small baton. My fingers wrapped tight around it, then came a whisper, just barely audible. He's awake. I leapt out of bed and flung the door open. No one. I checked the kitchen, the bathroom, the coat closet, nothing. But one thing was off. The hallway light. The one I had left on? It was off now. I hadn't touched it. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I called my friend Dan and asked if he could come over and stay the night. I didn't care how it sounded. I needed someone else in that space. Just for a night. He came over after work, brought a few beers, and we ended up playing video games until around midnight. I hadn't told him everything yet. Just said the place was giving me weird vibes. At some point, Dan went to use the bathroom. When he came back out, he looked pale. "What?" I asked. He pointed toward the kitchen. "You left someone else in here?" I just stared at him. "What are you talking about?"
"I saw someone, just now, in the kitchen. They ducked behind the counter. We both ran in there, looked everywhere, nothing. Dan thought maybe it was his reflection, that his eyes were playing tricks on him, but then we heard the thud. From the laundry closet, that same thud I'd heard that first night. We both turned. The closet door was slightly open. Dan walked over slowly and yanked the door open in one motion. Empty, but right there, wedged behind the washer, was the missing knife. We called the cops. This time, I didn't care how it sounded. They came, swept the apartment, didn't find anything, said it might have been an attempted break-in and that maybe I scared the guy off. They took the knife for prints, but nothing came back. Dan stayed the night. Slept on the couch. I didn't sleep at all. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. Nothing moved. Nothing made a sound. Until Wednesday. That morning, I walked into the kitchen and noticed something strange. There were crumbs on the counter. Not just a few, a line of them, like someone had made a sandwich in the middle of the night. And the bread bag? It was open. I live alone. I called Dan again. This time, I didn't ask. I begged him to help me check the attic. Now, this attic wasn't accessible from a proper staircase. It had one of those pull-down ladder things in the hallway. I'd never been up there. We climbed up together, flashlights in hand, and right there, tucked in the far corner of the crawl space, was a blanket, a backpack, and a half-eaten granola bar. Someone had been living up there. I called the cops again. This time, they took it seriously. Turns out the guy had been squatting in multiple units over the last few months. He wasn't even a tenant. Maintenance said he'd been caught once before and supposedly evicted, but no one followed up. He'd gotten in through the crawl space and used the shared attic space to enter different units at night. No cameras, no alarms, no trace. They never caught him. I moved out a week later. To this day, I still don't know how long he was watching me, or how many nights I went to sleep thinking I was alone when someone else was just a few feet above me. Some intruders come and go, others never left in the first place. But sometimes it's not your home they're in. It's someone else's. And you just happen to be the one house-sitting. This next story will change how you feel about sleeping in someone else's home. I was dog-sitting for my sister when this happened. She and her husband had gone to Cabo for the week, and they asked if I could stay at their place in the suburbs and watch their two dogs, Cooper and Luna. I was between jobs at the time, so I said sure. Free food, big house, and a couple of friendly dogs. Why not? They live in one of those quiet, newer developments where every house looks like a slightly different version of the same house. 2 stories, vinyl siding, tiny fenced backyards, the kind of place where people leave Halloween decorations up until January and no one really says anything. The first few nights were totally normal. I'd walk the dogs around 8, feed them, watch Netflix until I passed out. Nothing exciting. Nothing strange. But the 4th night? That's when things got weird. It was around 11:30. I was downstairs watching a movie in their living room, dogs curled up next to me, when I heard something upstairs. A short, hollow tap-tap sound. Almost like footsteps, but not quite. More like the heel of a shoe making contact with hardwood, just once or twice. I muted the TV, listened. Nothing. The dogs were still lying beside me, no reaction at all. So, I figured maybe the house was settling. These newer homes sometimes do that, expanding and contracting with the temperature changes. I even said out loud, "Chill out, it's nothing," like I needed to hear myself say it to believe it. Then, just as I was about to unpause the movie, Luna stood up, ears perked, facing the stairs, and she started growling. Low, steady, and aimed directly up toward the second floor. Cooper followed suit, but didn't growl, just stood next to her, tail stiff, staring toward the stairs like he was tracking movement. My heart started racing. I stood up and grabbed the flashlight from the kitchen drawer. Their hallway lights were on a timer, and I didn't feel like fumbling for switches. I walked slowly to the bottom of the stairs, trying not to make a sound. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I started up the steps one at a time, dogs still frozen at the bottom, not following like they usually did. That alone made my skin crawl. I turned down the hallway toward the guest room, where I'd been sleeping, and peeked inside. Nothing. Same with the office. Closet, clear. Bathroom, empty. But then I got to the master bedroom. Door closed. Which didn't make sense because I always left it cracked for airflow. I reached for the handle, but it was locked. Again, didn't make sense. They don't lock their door when they leave. There's no reason for that room to be locked at all. Then I heard it. A sound from inside the room. Click, like the quiet snap of something being shut or opened. I backed away slowly and called my sister. She answered after a couple rings, half asleep. "Hey, sorry to call so late," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Did you lock your bedroom before you left?" She sounded confused. "Number why?" "Because it's locked," I said, "and I just heard something inside it." Now she was fully awake. "Wait, what do you mean you heard something?" "I mean, it sounded like someone's in there." She went quiet, then asked, "Did you call the police?" "Number? Not yet. I wanted to check with you first. She told me to get out of the house, said she was calling 911 from her end and would send them over. I grabbed my jacket, clipped leashes to the dogs, and stepped outside. I waited across the street, in the shadows, pacing back and forth as I watched the house. 12 minutes later, 2 officers arrived. I flagged them down, explained the situation again. They went inside while I stayed with the dogs out front. 10 minutes later, they came back out and said the house was empty. "No signs of forced entry," the younger one said. "Rooms locked from the inside, so unless someone had a key and slipped out a window, there's no one in there." I asked if they'd checked the attic. They hadn't, but offered to go back in and take a look. Again, nothing. They told me it might have been old ductwork shifting. Sound can bounce weird in houses like that, especially at night. Maybe the door was just warped and shut itself. I knew what I heard, but there was nothing they could do. They left. I went back inside, triple-checked every window, locked every door, and left every hallway light on. But I couldn't sleep. Around 4:30 a.m., I finally started to drift off on the downstairs couch. That's when Luna started growling again. This time, it was toward the kitchen. I sat up and grabbed the flashlight. Then Cooper started barking, one loud, deep bark, and darted toward the laundry room. There's a door in that room that leads to the garage. I walked slowly after him, turned the corner, and stopped. The door to the garage was open, just a few inches. I didn't breathe, didn't move. Then I pushed it shut and locked it, called the cops again. This time they searched everything, including the garage, the backyard, under the deck, all of it. Again, nothing. But something was going on. That next morning, I checked the Ring cam. There was no footage of anyone entering. But around 3:19 a.m., it recorded a clip of the garage interior light turning on and staying on for exactly 22 seconds. Then off again. That camera is motion activated, but no person was visible in the frame. I showed it to my sister. She thought maybe a bug flew past the sensor, but I know what I saw, and I know how long that light was on. I stayed one more night, last night, because I didn't want to leave the dogs alone, but I didn't sleep. I sat in the kitchen with the flashlight on the table, and both dogs at my feet. Around 1:40 a.m., I heard the master bedroom door creak open upstairs. Not slam, not bang. Creak, like someone trying not to be heard. I stared at the ceiling and waited. But nothing followed. I didn't go up. At sunrise, I packed a bag and took the dogs to my apartment. And I haven't stepped foot in their house since. When my sister got back, she called me and said the weirdest thing. "Did you move the chair in our bedroom closet?" I said no. I hadn't been in the room at all. She told me it had been pulled out and turned around, facing the inside of the closet like someone had been sitting in it, watching the wall. She also found one of her perfume bottles on the floor. The cap was off, and it was empty. No signs of theft, nothing missing, just little changes. I don't know who was in that house with me. I don't know how they got in or why they never touched anything, but something was in there. Something was waiting. And to this day, the scariest part isn't that I was home alone. It's that at some point, I wasn't.